end of his consumer, you have to deliver for them. This channel. I remember my mother also died of cancer, lung cancer, and entertainment, Capri.
You know, I had a choice in that process of writing being myself.
Registered with these thoughts. But as a loving father,
Even with their
hi, Jennifer Eastwood. Welcome to the Bookaholic podcast.
Thank you so much for having me join.
Yes, well, we're very excited to have you as a guest. Today, we're going to talk about one of the world's most recognized brands, Disney, and part of its celebration of its first 100 years. That's incredible.
It really is. And it was also kind of daunting as a book editor to say, how are you going to commemorate this 100-year milestone? And
Yes. Well, I see you have done it in several volumes.
absolutely. And the way that we started to approach that question was we reached out to our partners at the Walt Disney Archives. So this is the team of people that collect everything and catalog everything and get it organized and then share it with all kinds of researchers. And we said, well, how do you want to see it celebrated? Because you live and breathe this all day. And they came back with two great notes. One was that they did not want a linear book by decade that just says, here's what happened, period. And two is that they really wanted Walt, the person, to be a draw and a focus and always that center hub of all of the storytelling. So all of the books in this program stem from that.
Yes. Well, before we start to explore the books to commemorate the 100 years, let me start with this. And it's going to sound like a very simple question, but yet I think it's going to be a very complex answer. Who was Walt Disney? This is a man that was certainly before his time, and he really was at the forefront or used what technology he had at the time. We think we have technology, but this man kind of grasped what was there, what little bit was there, and really amplified it until it has become this huge worldwide, this international recognized brand. What kind of person was he?
Well, you're so right. It's simple and complex, right? At his heart, he was a storyteller. He just always wanted to share, entertain, inspire, and bring optimism to an audience. And that's what drove him to do all that he did in his professional life. And as a person, which I think you really do get a sense of in these books, he was a son, a father, a grandfather, a mentor. He was the type of leader and producer that would not just delegate a task that needed to be done without considering who and why he was delegating it, because he really liked to match up a person with a certain skill set or talent that he believed could not only get the job done, but really knock it out of the park. And he had this incredible talent of not even just seeing people for where they were at in the moment, but also saying, this is your potential that I see in you. Because you've done this and this, I can see how you could put those two together and do this completely different other type of thing. And often he was so right and allowed so many people to push their creative boundaries, their technological boundaries, in all sorts of ways. And I think that's the leveling up that you see through the 100 years, is that you're always building on this solid foundation and going up and up.
Got you. Well, now, I know you guys did not want to do a linear, you couldn't really do it because there's so many moving parts to Disney in and of itself. But just for viewers, if we can just kind of maybe touch on decades, we've all seen the little black and white cartoon snippet of Mickey Mouse, who was in Steamboat Willie, and he's
Mhm.
whistling and chugging along. Now, so we have that. And what decade was that?
So
What year?
that's 1920s.
That's
Steamboat
19.
Willie was 1928. And so
Okay.
this anniversary that we're celebrating that starts in 1923, that
Mhm.
was Walt and his brother Roy signing a contract that said that they would start producing what they called Alice comedies. And they took a live action footage of this sweet little girl and named Alice and set
Okay.
her into a cartoon land world. And so she had misadventures with these cartoon animals. And
Oh.
that was his first series.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That's very interesting, and I don't think a lot of people know that. Now, as we move on with the Disney characters that we're all familiar with, did Walt Disney himself create all the ones that we know, from Mickey to Minnie to all the Disney characters that we're familiar with?
So absolutely he did,
Wow.
but not alone. And
Okay.
if I may read my favorite quote from him from the book,
Sure. Yes.
he says, "No man alone can do very much of consequence without the help of others." And
Yes.
the reason I love that is because you see it in his entire life, his entire career. He was never the only guy in the room ever. and and that was by design because he had such big dreams and such big visions that he just knew that logistically one person's not going to get it there. And
Mhm.
that was his art form to say, but I do know who could help with this aspect because they're talented here in this way, and who could help with this aspect because they're talented here in this way. He pulled all the right people together so that
Mhm.
the actual execution of everything was
Yes.
grander and more powerful than any one imagination alone from him.
Yes, yes, that's wonderful and quite a great way of delegating, first of all.
Truly,
Now, as we move on through the decades and through the years, we have more and more, say, cartoons involving the characters we know, correct?
that is correct.
And then when did we morph into more of the actual actors and actresses acting in Disney movies? What was the first Disney movie that was not a cartoon?
So in the 1950s, it was Treasure Island. And it
Oh,
was a pirate epic adventure, and it was all live action, 100%. Before that, there had been maybe, well, again, from the beginning, right? This Alice
mhm,
comedy series that kicked it all off was live
mhm,
action paired with animation.
right.
So there had been other examples of that through those years, but Treasure Island was the one that started it all with live action.
Wow, 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 and I'm hoping I'm correct. Mary Poppins, was that under
Right?
the Disney brand? Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
you
Chitty
think
Chitty Bang Bang?
no, but
Not Chi
it's a that's a friendly one because the Sherman Brothers, who have done so many great musical numbers with Disney, did the
mhm.
music for that too. So it's
Oh,
a
okay.
cousin, if you will.
Okay, okay, not all the way wrong. Well, those are Mary Poppins is certainly a beloved movie full of little songs that I remember singing as a child and will not sing here. And I thought about this the other day. There was, I think this was towards the late 60s, probably early 70s, and I forgot the name of the movie, but it starred Uncle Remus. And the song in that is zippity doo dah, zippity yay. It's really a zippity little song to remember as a child. But I think about Uncle Remus and his portrayal, and I thought, probably Disney will not let that see the light of day again. So, what is your opinion on that? And whatever happened to that movie, or could that movie be revised in some type of way?
So a lot of the history of the catalog will have these cultural depictions that we don't consider are right today.
Right.
So there are definitely sensitivities when you're playing in the world of Disney history.
Hmm.
Well, for us in the guiding light with this book was always to come back to, okay, well, each chapter in this big coffee table book and its companion coloring book
Yes.
really is about a specific story focus. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's about sound and music, sometimes it's about innovation, sometimes it's about um, the wonder of animals and nature. And
Mhm.
so when we were pulling in all the different examples across the company, again, we were sort of allowed to say, okay, this isn't a catalog where we have to say, here's every single thing ever done and pull in
Right.
everything and speak to
Right.
it all. But to
Yeah.
say, here are these examples that we're going to call out that span the decades that really feed into these story themes and bring in a reason of why we're talking about that to
Right.
support this overall important thesis, which is these are the elements that were really important to Walt.
Yes, yes, yes. And as we fast forward to say like the last 20 years to now, give us some examples on how Disney has changed and morphed more into representing different religious and cultural backgrounds.
Well, again, I think it all comes back to story and what you want to who your audience is. And the audience is more global now than ever before.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so the stories need to open up and be more inclusive than ever before. And
Yes.
that really is just speaking to the heart of you want your stories to be reflective of your audience.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. And since you all have so many different brands from parks to the movies to cartoons, etc., and I think there, of course, your book division, there's so much that's there. Definitely, you want to make sure that you are inclusive going forward. So let's talk about the books that you were responsible for pulling together, but you weren't alone, just like that quote.
I was not alone. That is a wonderful quote that guides me because no one person can do it alone.
No, and I would be scared as could be to even think about that. But we have our first book, The Story of Disney 100 Years of Wonder, and that's the one we've been talking about or alluding to right now the most. That also has the companion coloring book.
It does have the companion coloring book. So it's an adult coloring book. So which means that it has, all those patterns that lets you just sit down and sort of
Mhm.
meditate and relax while you're just coloring it in. But it
Yeah,
was also developed by the team at the Walt Disney Archives, who's so passionate about
yeah,
bringing joyful pieces to their, to share with the audience. So they really dug in and they said, we have so many vintage coloring books through the years. We could pool all these different pieces. So you get coloring book line art from the 30s and the 40s and 50s. And then you get line art of Treasure Island, from its press kit, or Swiss Family Robinson, or The Rocketeer. And then you
yes,
move all the way up into like modern day animation with Encanto and the latest Pixar film. So
yes,
it
yes,
again, because it's structured in this storytelling way, so each chapter is something that's going to resonate personally with Walt as a topic. Then you
yeah.
bring in all these visual goodies in that way, and it's just this delightful wild ride.
Yes, well, I was just thinking, from time to time, right now I'm trying to embrace embroidery. I do puzzles, and I have to put them away for like a month at a time because they frustrate me. And I do a little scrapbooking in notebooks. And I was like, that Disney coloring book, because I think hobbies, that lends to self care. So certainly that was exciting to hear that that's an adult themed coloring book. So, and if, I would love to see the historical look of some of the line drawings of from the 1930, from the Treasure Island. That would be
Mhm.
wonderful. But moving on, we did touch base on the quote book, and these are all quotes from the man himself, Walt Disney, and like over 450 quotes from him.
So when the archives pitched doing this book, they said, listen, there've been Walt Disney quote books that have come out before. And you can
Mhm.
go online and you can Google Walt Disney quotes, and there are things that come up. But with this book, what we'd like to do is really make an annotated index at the end that says
Oh,
you can point to a primary source for every quote in here. And that way, you know when and where and why he said that, and
mhm.
backed up, as well as the words are there on the page. And it was such an ambitious goal because finding all of that detail really meant digging deep through files and
Yes.
watching videos verbatim and really just capturing it. But now there is this artifact that exists forevermore that you will not only be able to appreciate flipping through the quotes, getting words of wisdom that are so many, are still so relevant today to help you in your own career path or even just personal mantras that make for healthy living. Um,
Mhm.
but also to, if you really wanted to dig in at that scholarship level and say, but can you prove that you said that? We can't.
Right. Yes, yes, wonderful. Well, you mentioned a little earlier, Walt Disney's brother, Roy, and I know in recent times of my life, I won't speculate on the years, I've heard of Roy, and he was actually living, at the time, and Walt Disney, I don't even recall him being alive during my, lifetime. I guess I was maybe very young when he maybe passed away. So did he die young?
Relatively young by our standards. He
Mhm,
died in the 1960s,
mhm.
and he was in his 60s at the time.
Okay,
So
okay, okay.
and his brother Roy picked up the mantle to run the company immediately after.
Yes.
With one of those core projects being Walt Disney World, which opened in 1971,
Okay.
was planned and what had a lot of Walt's input in all of that planning of down to where the park was physically going to be located
Mhm,
on a site plan map
mhm,
and
mhm.
which direction it was going to go so that it got the best sunlight.
Yeah.
And so he was not around when it actually started to get constructed and built, but it's
Right.
the reason the place is called Walt Disney World because Roy said this is Walt's place. His DNA is all through this. This is something that he envisioned, and we are just carrying it out. So we're going to name it Walt Disney World.
Oh, wow, and that's one thing I don't think a lot of people may know, that he never actually was at what we know as Walt Disney World.
That's right. I
He
mean,
may have
he
had all the thoughts and ideas and all of these things, which is important, of course, but I don't think we realized that he never stood there while people were walking around and enjoying themselves.
I have to tell you one of my favorite parts of the biography. So it's
Yes,
Walt Disney an American Original or Commemorative Edition. There are
yes.
many reasons I love this book, but one of the things that we did at the end was pull in different authors' voices for little snippets
Mhm,
and excerpts because
mhm.
we wanted the main biography that we were reissuing to remain the same because it is so important. But
Yeah.
it really felt like, oh, there's been so much great scholarship done in recent years that we could augment this with a back section and bring in more voices. Well,
Mhm,
that section ends with this letter from Marty Sklar, who ran the Walt Disney Imagineering division for decades.
mhm.
And he is, at the time of writing this letter, Walt has passed away, and
Okay.
he has just gone on a helicopter tour to look down at the Florida property while people describe to him, this is what's building here, this is what's building there. And he's
Wow.
sitting on top of a car in a swamp, and he's writing this very dear, passionate letter to Walt to say, all your visions and ideas are coming to life. And it gives me chills every time I read this letter from Marty. So that was a very important way that we wanted to end that section because it's just it says everything about his
Wow.
Walt's legacy continuing on.
Wow, that's incredible. And it would have to take, sometimes we see movies or read books where, there's something as important and had the potential as the Disney company. Somebody would be, the brother would, oh, I'm doing this my way or taking
Yeah,
it another direction. He certainly had to come from at least a loving family or having a loving brother to
yeah,
want to carry it out to that degree, to his wishes, or even not even his wishes, just to his ideals. And that means something about where, or the type of people he came from.
Absolutely. And I think that's true of the family and all of his colleagues, right? The fact that this colleague of his is sitting writing this emotional letter to say, Walt, we're doing right by you. It's going to work.
Yes.
Your idea is actually going to work.
Mm.
That means that that person felt so believed in by Walt during his tenure with him that he really hit him, got him in the heart, and that's
Ah.
everything.
Yes, yes. And again, that goes to say something about Walt Disney. He must have not been an ogre type of an individual, maybe certainly a businessman, maybe certainly a creative genius. But he must have been at least a person that people could respect and love and want to carry these missions out on his behalf.
I think one of the through lines that you read again and again in these history accounts is that Walt respected the people around him. So,
Mhm.
the idea that a good idea could come from anywhere was truly put into practice. It wasn't just something
Mhm.
that was said. He really believed that everyone had something to contribute, and he paid attention to people enough to sort
Yeah.
of figure out like how they might best contribute, because he had the big picture scheme in his head, and he
Right.
could look at you and say, okay, I see what you're doing here, so I think this is where you would really shine, and it really
Yes.
worked.
Wow, wow. Well, let's give a shout out to all of the special people that helped you pull all of these commemorative books together. You mentioned the archives, folks
Yeah,
that work in the archives, and then there's special authors and contributors to these books. Why were
absolutely.
they picked, and who are they?
So our wonderful Walt Disney Archives team is led by a woman named Becky Klein, and she just nurtures her team in such a caring way where she lets each of them get involved in creative aspects like this. So that it's not just, hey, you fact check this. It's, hey, we're making a coloring book. Do you want to like go through some old line art and pick some pieces out that are really inspiring to you? And gives them that chance to try different things.
Yes.
And then on our coffee table book, we had two amazing journalists to work with. One being John Baxter and the other Bruce Steele. And they were able to just get all this information from the Walt Disney Archives, and distill it down into these beautifully concise passages that make
Mhm.
up the book's text. And it really is that to their credit to say, you can dig through all of that information to distill it for us,
Right,
and get
right.
it to a place where you can go from like a historical example to a modern example and help walk us along that connection path along the way.
Wow, incredible, incredible. And now, so I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but we see, of course, that it's the 100 years is commemorated by these 4 volumes, which sound fantastic. What else does Disney have up their sleeves to commemorate the 100 years?
Well, one of the things that's going on is Disney 100, the exhibition. So it opened
Hmm.
in Philadelphia already, and then it's going to start touring around the country,
Oh,
hopefully for a nice long time. And that exhibition was put together creatively by the staff of the Walt Disney Archives. So our main big Disney coffee table book for the story of Disney 100 Years of Wonder really is a companion to that exhibition. So if you can't get to Philadelphia right now, the book is the next best thing to walk you through. So each
wow.
chapter in our book that has that storytelling motif, also each exhibit room in this exhibition is that same storytelling motif. Um,
Wow. Okay.
and then of course Disney parks, Disneyland being Walt's park. That's
Yes.
that's the center of attention right now with the yummy treats and the beautiful
Yes.
decorations, and everything looks very silvery and platinum, and the mice have a gorgeous new outfit look. So there's a lot of love going on at the parks too.
Wow, wow. Well, I will have to say, I put in my plug that at once upon a time when I had small children, we took them to the Disney parks twice. And each and every time it was a wonderful experience. The parks are so clean. There's not a piece of paper. You can't find anything lying on the ground. There's someone to sweep it up, and you barely can even see the people or notice them. So it's definitely a perfect, peaceful, special, creative world of wonder to actually go to one of the Disney World properties. It's fantastic.
That cleanliness aspect, that actually comes from Walt as well, because as the story goes in the book, tells his wife his idea. He's like, I want us to make an amusement park. And she's like, "Ugh, they're so dirty. Why would you want to do that?" And he says,
Right.
mine won't, mine will be clean. And then he had to back that up and say, okay, what's it going to take to keep a park like this clean? and and all of those resources, that's what they had to figure out. But again, that's his, there's the big idea, there's the dream. I'm going to run an amusement park and it's going to stay clean. Okay, how do we
Yes.
get there? And then
Wow.
all that it takes to get there.
Wow. It's incredible. It is incredible. Well, Jennifer, how can everybody access these wonderful volumes?
So they're for sale everywhere books are sold, and disneybooks.com is our website that will point you in the right direction on everything. Disney Books is also our social handle too.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we certainly will have that information in the podcast show notes and in the video box description on YouTube. Jennifer Eastwood, thank you so much for joining the Bookaholic podcast and sharing this wonderful Disney news.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.